Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. I have another family favorite recipe and it's called Tepertős Pogácsa, pork crackling biscuits. So what you will need for this recipe is 4 cups of pre-sifted flour, and so I have this in my bowl here, and I've got a half a teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to add that to my flour mixture, and I'm using a stand mixer bowl. As you can see, I've got the handle there. I'm going to pre-mix everything in here by hand with a wooden spoon, and then I'm going to attach it to my stand mixer machine, and I'm going to knead it together. So I'm just going to begin by doing this. Now if you don't have a stand mixer bowl, you can use just a large bowl like this and just mix it together with a wooden spoon, all the liquid and yeast mixture ingredients and your flour ingredients, and then knead it by hand. Gently knead it by hand. So I'm just mixing that together, so I'm just going to put this aside here. And then I've got my wet ingredients. So they are going to pre-mix them in this bowl, and then I'm going to add it to the bowl with the flour in it. So what I've got here is a half a cup of sour cream, and I've used a low-fat sour cream for this one, but you can use any type of sour cream that you want. I've used a low-fat sour cream for it, and then going there, and then I've got some lard. So I've got a 1/4 cup of lard, and then I've got 2 egg yolks, large eggs, and then I've got half a teaspoon of dark rum. Now you can use white wine or vinegar for this recipe also. But my recipe from my grandmother has just a 1/4 teaspoon, a very small amount of rum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stir this together. And I've got my yeast mixture. My yeast mixture has half a cup of lukewarm water, half a cup of lukewarm milk, and a tablespoon of sugar, and then I've got 3 tablespoons of traditional dry active yeast. And I've already prepared that. I'm just going to stir this around really good. And then I've got my dry active yeast, and I'm going to be adding that to the well in my flour. So I'm just going to put this over here, and I'm going to bring back my flour. And I'm going to make a well with my spoon, wooden spoon. And I'm going to add all these ingredients in there, and then I'm going to stir it around with my wooden spoon, and then I'm going to attach it to my stand mixer. And I'm going to start it off at low speed and then bring it up quickly. Now if your dough is too sticky, then you can add flour. So what I've got here is I've got some flour in a bowl ready for that. And of course for my pastry board and my rolling pin when I start rolling out the dough. So I'm going to take my sour cream, and I'm going to add that to the middle. Put that well. Then I'm going to take my yeast, and I'm going to add it into the center of my, and it's risen quite well. I used a large bowl for that, so it doesn't overflow from my bowl. So I'm going to make sure I get all of this out of here. And then I'm just going to mix all of these ingredients and get it ready for my stand mixer. It's just easier to do it that way, off the machine. And if it gets too dry, then I just add a little bit of more liquid to it. So what I'll do is I will attach this to my stand mixer and I will knead the dough, and then I will be back to show you what the next steps are. Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. I've been preparing the Tepertős Pogácsa. It's pork crackling biscuits, and so what I've got in the bowl here is the risen dough. So I've covered it, and it took about 2 hours to get to this point. So I did say in my recipe that it's 1.5 hours to 2 hours, so this is approximately 2 hours. So what I did was I floured the bottom of the bowl, like I said, with my little tip there in my recipe, and I mentioned it also in my video that you should flour the bottom of your bowl so that it's easier to take out. And then I did the top also, and I covered it with a large tea towel. So I'm just going to take this and put this on. It's much easier to get off onto the pastry board, and I've floured the pastry board. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out the dough. But first, before I start that, I'm going to just show you. This is what the pork cracklings look like. Now this is from the pork jowls. It can be from pork bellies, but I got this from my deli. They fried it up. They fry it up every morning at my local Hungarian deli. And this is what the pork cracklings look like before they actually get ground in this little machine. I have this little machine here. I ground it down to a paste. So I've got it all in the bowl here. So this is what this should look like. It should look like a paste. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread that on 1/3 of it. So I'm going to take 1/3 of this and I'm going to spread it on with a knife. Spread it on evenly, and then I'll show you what the next process is to do that. So you will need 4 cups of the unground pork cracklings, 4 cups of this, and that should give you this amount, which is 2 cups. So I measured it out. It's about 2 cups of ground pork cracklings. And so now I'm going to begin by getting my rolling pin and flouring it down a bit, and then rolling it out. Medium thickness. So this is a great recipe. Like if you're, like I say, I did the cheese rods last week. This is another recipe that you could prepare. Like, you know, you've got a long weekend football game, sort of a gathering, or some kind of a hockey, or sort of a gathering with family and friends, or family, friends. So I'm going to roll this out to medium thickness. I'm going to just keep turning it around this way and smooth it out. And there is a process to go with this, and I'll just describe it to you as I'm going along. So once I've rolled this out to medium thickness, I'm going to just position it on my board lengthwise like that. And then I'm going to take 1/3 of my pork cracklings. I'm going to take about that much, 1/3 of it, so to divide it, and then I can spread it on with a spoon or a knife. I'm going to evenly spread it across my dough. And you want to work it into the dough. So the idea is that you take the pork cracklings and spread them as much as possible across your dough, and then I'll show you how to fold it. Now the reason for the folding is that then you get that sort of like that flaky pastry. And we're going to do this 3 times. Take and you're going to use your hands to do the kneading for this process. You won't be using your stand mixer if you are using an electric stand mixer. That's only for kneading the dough together initially. So you want to spread this across your dough as much as possible. Because you're going to work that into your dough. Like so. Now the next step is that you're going to fold your dough this way, and you're going to fold it this way, and you're going to fold it this way, and then you're going to work this into your dough. You're going to knead it into your dough, like this. And then you're going to roll it out again. You're going to let it rest. So this takes a little bit of working. So you fold it over, like so, and you work it into your dough. Like that. And then you do it again. You roll out the dough. Takes a little bit of work here to do this, but oh, it's amazing. This recipe is just great. It's going to be done special occasions. It's like there's a big piece there. Got to make sure it's ground down good in your grinder machine. So I just use a small machine, the one that I just showed you. So you keep working it into your dough like that. At first it doesn't look like it's going to go in there, but then you've got some on hand, you've got a little bit of flour. I'm going to have that ready for your baking so it doesn't stick to your dough. And then you're ready to roll it out again. And then roll this out and then let it rest for about 10 minutes. Now you see how it's worked itself into the dough. Roll it out, let it rest for about between 10 and 15 minutes, and then you start the process again. You let this rest for about between 10 and 15 minutes, and then you do the same process. You put the a third of the ground pork cracklings on it. I did mention that there's some really good recipes to make pork cracklings, and on the website. The only thing you have to be careful with is the safety of it, you know, because you're working with hot grease and that. And so I got this, my local deli does this. Like other delis, like other than Hungarian delis, probably Polish or different delis might do this for you. They fry it up. I know our local deli does it, they were saying every morning. So this was freshly made yesterday morning actually. My husband and I went to pick it up and then of course I bought a whole bunch of other stuff. Some delicious things there. And picked up some couple things for my mom and dad too along the way. So I'm going to leave this, as you can see, the pork cracklings have been kneaded into the dough. I'm going to leave this to rest for approximately 10 minutes, and then I'll be back to show you the last step. So I'm going to wait 20 minutes, and I'll be back around 20 minutes. So I will do the same thing. I will spread another third of this on there, work it into the dough like I showed you, and then again roll it out, leave it for 10 minutes, and then work it in the dough, leave it for another 10 minutes, and then I will be back to show you how to cut it out with my cutter, my cookie cutter, and actually we're going to score it. We're going to do scoring on the top, like sort of checkered type thing, and then we're going to put sort of like a egg, kind of like a wash on top of it, and then cut it out. And I'll kind of go through those steps with you when I come back. Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. I'm preparing a family favorite recipe, and it's called Tepertős Pogácsa, pork crackling biscuits. So I rolled out the dough 3 times. I spread the ground pork cracklings on top of the dough, rolled out the dough. One tip that I'd like to suggest is that when you are putting the pork cracklings on, the ground pork cracklings on, that you put dollops, small dollops all across the dough, and then spread it with a spoon or a knife. It's just easier to do that rather than putting a big dollop in the middle. So that's just what I did to continue this process. So I kneaded it into the dough as I showed you initially, and then I left it for 10 minutes each. And now I've rolled out the dough, and what I've done is I've scored the top of the dough. This makes it sort of unique at the top. It makes it a little bit fancier. So what I did was I just took a knife like this, a sharp knife like this, sort of a steak knife, or you could get a scoring knife if you wanted to and use that. But what I did was you can see kind of like the squares. And what you do with scoring is that you don't cut it right into the pastry, you cut it on the surface of the pastry. So I'm going to do vertical, and that's what I've done with half of it already. I've already begun to do that process. And I scored it, so I'm going to do the other half for you. So you go down, this way, and I did mention that this recipe is great for like gatherings. You've got even for celebrations like Christmas, birthday, any type of celebration or gathering that you have with your family and friends. And this makes up a lot of biscuits. Any leftover biscuits can be put into a freezer-safe container, wrapped up in some parchment paper or wax paper. And what I've done is I've sort of trimmed down the edges. So any leftover dough, you would re-roll them and make biscuits out of them again. So, and that's what I'll be doing. So what I'll do now is I'm going to go this way, horizontal. So I'm going to go across to make that I'm just going to follow that other line that I had already initially done, and it's just going to score it on the top, cut it in the surface of it. If it gets too sticky, you can use flour. So I've got my bowl of flour here, so just dip it in that. And then after that, I'm going to put the egg wash on top of it. Now the egg wash, the reason why I use an egg wash is because it just gives it that golden texture to it, shiny texture to it. And you can put it on before you cut it out with a biscuit cutter, or I'm using a cookie cutter actually, medium size one. Now you can make big biscuits if you want. I like to do them medium size. Some people make them even smaller, sort of like finger type, small, petite ones. So it's your choice, but you have to be careful in the oven. If you're going to make them small, you've really got to watch them so that they don't burn. If they're bigger, you'll have to kind of bake them probably for a little bit longer. So I preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Ready for the biscuits to go in. So I'm just finishing off scoring the top of the, do this one a little bit deeper. So that when it bakes, you've got kind of like a checkered kind of a pattern. Now you can put the egg wash on after you've cut out the biscuits, but I'm going to put the egg wash on now and then cut them out. So either way, I just find it a little bit less messy if you do it this way. I did the same thing with the cheese rods. I put the egg wash on top and then I cut out whatever you're making, your biscuits or rods, your cheese rods. So I've got this cookie cutter, and it's got sort of like fancy edge, but if you've just got a traditional, just a smooth edge one, that's fine too. But I'm going to use this one today because this is what I have. And I'm going to cut out the dough, but before I do that, I've got 2 whole eggs, and I've kind of whisked them with a fork. And I've got this baster here. So I'm just going to put this on the top of my, just gently. Put it on the top there. Spread it on there, and then you can cut out your biscuits. And like I said, you can use, you can make large biscuits if you want. I'm going to make them kind of medium size. You can make them petite, like for finger sort of foods type thing. Make them tinier if you want. I've seen that done. That at our spring bazaar at our church, I've seen people bringing in their baked goods for the spring bazaar. They bake up a bunch, volunteers bake up a bunch of recipes. I've seen them big, I've seen them medium. But if it's kind of like a tea or something, tea bazaar, then finger foods, you know, depending. You might have a gathering, you might have a little meeting in at your house, gathering, whatever. And you can probably make them smaller. These are great for all kinds of occasions. So I'm just going to brush this over as much as I can. I've got 2 whole eggs here. So I'm going to save some for my leftover dough that I cut out. And I'm going to re-roll it. And then score them again. But you could get lots from this. A little bit more here in the center. Didn't get that yet. Make sure I got, so it's nice and evenly going to be golden. Okay, so I'm going to take my cookie cutter, and I've got some baking sheets that are lined with parchment paper. You can grease your baking sheets if you want to. So I'm just going to cut out some. Okay, so I'm just going to cut them out. Like that. And put them on a cookie sheet. So I'm going to continue doing that, and then I'm going to leave them on a cookie sheet for about 10 minutes, let them rest, and then I'm going to put them in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So I've got some, you put them on your baking sheet like that. Not too close together because they will grow in the oven. They've got the yeast in them. So, and I'm going to continue cutting these out and putting them on my cookie sheet. I'm going to let them sit for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to pop them in the oven. And you would wait. They bake probably between 15 and 20 minutes, but I'd keep checking them, and they should be nice and golden brown. And take them out, and you can put your other batch in there. Get those ready on another sheet, cut them all out, and then continue to bake them in the oven. So what I'll do is I'll be back to show you what this great recipe looks like coming out of the oven. Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. I just took out of the oven some Tepertős Pogácsa pork crackling biscuits, and I left it in the oven for about 30 to 35 minutes. So this is what they look like coming out fresh out of the oven. So I've made them kind of smaller. You can make them higher if you wanted to. You can cut the dough out thicker if you want to, but this is the size that I like to have. And as you can see, there's bacon in there, and it's baked quite well. It's crispy on the outside, and it's sort of if you break it apart, it's looks like that in the inside. So it looks great, and you can see the bacon bits in there. So what you have to remember to do is that you preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you roll out your dough, and then score the dough, and then put your egg wash on it. You can put the egg wash on it after, but I just find that it's less messier if you just score the dough first and then put your egg wash on it, and then cut out the size of biscuits that you want. So you can make them higher. I like to make them this size, but this is what this size of biscuits look like. They just taste so delicious. You can add a little bit more salt to your recipe. I have a half a teaspoon of salt, so you can add a little bit more to that to make it saltier. But the pork cracklings are usually salty. So I've got some more pre-cut, and there's some already, a whole bunch in the oven that's baking. So they should be all done in about 30 minutes. Somebody probably going over to my parents' house tomorrow to take a batch of these for them too. So like I said, this is great for celebrations, birthdays, gatherings. You can make them smaller. You can make them into little petite sizes. You can make them thicker. Thicker in size. So if you have any questions or comments regarding this recipe or any other recipes on my website, please feel free to contact me at irinkaskitchen.com or irene@irinkaskitchen.com. Until next time, bon appetit, jó étvágyat!